So, my name is Jan. Welcome, you guys, to a hot debate between in-state and out-of-state investing. You guys know me from the WARI Facebook group, and I'm excited to be partnering here with my friend Augustus or Augie. I will each tell you a little bit about ourselves before we kick off the debate. So my name again is Jan. I've been investing in real estate for about 5 years. Currently, I only own property in-state, so I am authentically going to be representing the in-state investment side. I've got single-family, multifamily, mobile home park, RV park, and Augie and I built 2 assisted living facilities that we sold to a low-cost birth center, and now we're converting them to low-cost birth centers. So that's my experience in Washington. A little bit of everything. I've done short-term rentals as well, and flips and wholesales. It's all been here in Washington, so I'm excited to share why I love investing in Washington. And we'll let Augie tell you guys a little bit about himself. Once he unmutes. Pete says, nice flamethrower on, thank you. I've got to keep it exciting for you guys. If I start losing, I can just start using the flamethrower, so. Augie, let's hear about your experience with investment, and I believe you are strictly in-state as of right now as well, right?
I am so hyper-focused that I only like to invest in 2 counties and specifically portions of those counties. So I'm from Finney Ridge in Seattle. That's where I was born and raised. And I watched the entire city completely change around me. Back when my parents bought my property, Finney Ridge was a fixer-upper bad neighborhood. And they bought the ugliest, crappiest house on the block. And over 35 years, it became a multi-million-dollar home that I actually bought off my dad for $1 million, flipped it and sold it for $2 million. And it's just crazy because it was only like $85,000 35 years ago. So I was always very interested in real estate because I saw what was happening around me. And because I was in North Seattle, I knew that North Seattle is where I wanted to invest. So I started investing very heavily in North Seattle, which is basically anything, I couldn't afford Capitol Hill or Queen Anne when I started. So anything really north of, downtown, north of Queen Anne. I was fortunate to be able to get into like maybe Fremont back in 2013-ish, but not much closer to the city. And then as my development and real estate investing has grown, I've moved up north to South Snohomish. So areas like Motley Terrace, Edmonds, and are really where I target. So very hyper local, very hyper specific. And I can't think of a better place to invest than right here in my own backyard.
Sweet. Thanks, Augie. All right, so out of state, we have the infamous Jennifer and Cody. So Jennifer, can we hear a little bit about your background with investing and specifically out of state investing?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, everyone. My name is Jennifer Beatles. I am originally from Western Washington. I don't identify with Seattle. I was raised up in the country there in Stanwood, Washington on 40 acres. Lived in Seattle pretty much all of my life until about 9 months ago. So my family and I grew tired of the very expensive cost of living, the high increase in crime. And we have been kind of on a 9-month journey of trying to find a better place to live. So we're currently based right now in Phoenix. We've been through 22 different states over the last 9 months, having a great time kind of traveling around, exploring different areas. And my experience with investing, so I got started actually in 2007 when I bought my first house as a 21-year-old woman. It was the cheapest house in Marysville, Washington, complete fixer-upper, and just kind of fell in love with real estate from there. I got started then doing building and development, spec home building, buying at the foreclosure auctions, lots of flips, lots of ugly houses purchased over the years, and really spent the first 9 years as an investor buying in the Western Washington area. So primarily Snohomish County, Skagit County. And then I was kind of faced with a decision. I couldn't find deals that made sense for my investing strategy, which is long-term buy and hold. I invest so that these rental properties can pay for my lifestyle, so my family and I can travel all around. And we just weren't finding the deals locally. So I made my first investment out of state in Indianapolis in 2016 and really just kind of went all in. I now own in, 5 different states, 6 different markets, about 240 units. And I'm really passionate about helping other investors get started. So really, I believe that out-of-state investing is actually the most viable strategy because of the low financial barrier to entry. So I think we're going to dive into, a little bit more on the topics there. But yeah, it's a little bit about me. So super excited to have you guys here, and definitely let us know in the chat also where you're viewing from. We want to make sure that there's not too many Seattle people on here that are voting. So anyway. Let us know, guys, as you're watching, maybe on Facebook Live or in the chat where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Cody, how about you, sir? Can we hear a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, you bet. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so I'm Cody Touchette. I work at Caliber Home Loans. I've been in the business for about a little over 20 years, 21 years now. Started getting more into investing as we were coming out of the crunch from 2006 to 2009, 10, 11. I was doing some flipping in 9, 10, and 11. And 11, the market started to turn and started going back up in value. So I thought it might be better to start holding on to properties. So started then in 2011, and I was just kind of growing a small local portfolio. So I was an in-town investor then. I had about 26 units, and then about 3 years ago, I met Jen at the auctions, but 3 years ago, Jen really started hitting the gas on the out-of-state stuff, and man, I just jumped in. And so now we've got 138 rental doors, and just really enjoy the out-of-state piece because I just feel like I can get a ton more income for the same amount of money spent. Like, we'll go into some examples, but I've got some properties here then in Western Washington that make half, they're worth double, and they make the same rents, right? So they're double the value here in Western Washington, and the rents in Clarksville, Tennessee are exactly the same as the fourplex here in Linwood. So I love helping people get started. And the thing that I love about out-of-state investing is the barrier to entry is quite a bit lower. We have clients that get started with $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. And that's just really hard to do in our metro area, which I love our metro area as well, right? Seattle's home. I've lived here for a really long time. I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon except for a vacation. And it's hard to make it make sense from a cash flow perspective for a lot of our investors. So that's why we head out of town.
Awesome. Cool. Everyone, thanks for sharing a little bit about your journeys thus far. And I think we're about ready to kick off this debate. So just to give you guys a little preview of the structure, Augie and I will kick it off, and we'll talk about a piece of in-state investing that's important to us, and then we'll give Jen and Cody an opportunity to kind of respond to that and talk about why the other side has perhaps more merit. And we're going to do about 5 minutes per side, and so whoever speaks within that time frame can speak freely until Diana will kind of cut us off around. She'll let us know when there's about a minute left. And then the other side, again, will have a chance to retort. So, and then at the end of this, and we'll go back and forth a couple of times. And at the end of this, guys, keep your questions ready because we'll keep at least 10 to 15, maybe 20 minutes open for Q&A. This is ultimately for you guys to get your questions answered and understand the benefits of each. And let me also just preface all of this with saying I'm closing on a 44-unit mobile home park in Wisconsin. So I'm not completely against out-of-state investing. I don't hate Jen and Cody. I love them. And this is just a friendly debate. So even though we might get heated or excited about what we're talking about, I think we're all on the same page that there are certainly merits to both. And there's no wrong answers with investing, right? We're all here to make money, improve communities, and many other reasons, really. I mean, there's many other reasons to invest in real estate, but those are primarily the reasons I'm here. And so I think we're all on the same page with that. And with that, let's get started. So Augie and I will kick it off, and we are going to be talking first about in-state appreciation and also just general overall return, right? So Augie, I'll kick us off for a minute and then I'll let you jump in. But, actually, Mark Canton, CPA, and I looked at a chart of a few different properties and looked at kind of not just, and I know Jen and Cody look at this too, right? Not just net cash flow per property. That's a small piece of the pie. But when you look at net cash flow plus annualized appreciation plus tax benefits plus principal pay down, or having the tenants pay your debt, that return can be very telling. And what was telling about it in Washington when we looked at a few properties was that the biggest piece of the pie when looked at over a 10-year period was appreciation, right? And we were very conservative in that model at only 3%, and it still made up far more of a annualized return than net cash flow alone. So that's a reason that I think Washington is awesome, because we have such strong appreciation in this market. When you kind of put that in together with the other returns, like that cash flow, like principal pay down, like tax benefits, that, in my experience, has been a better return overall here than things I've looked at out of state. It's not that I haven't looked out of state. It's that I'm finding great opportunities here. And when I think about appreciation at 3% or up to 8% a year in that model, it looks a lot better. So that's kind of my first point. And Augie, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it just all boils down to internal rate of return, right? Like, where is our money coming from? What are we using the money for? And so, as Jan said, appreciation is absolutely the factor that makes Washington one of the best places to invest in America. We've been averaging, let's not count this year where it's just absolutely bonkers, but we've been averaging 10, 12% a year since 2012 or 2013. So if you're out there in Oklahoma or Tennessee or wherever these higher cap rates are, you're not getting that 10 to 12% appreciation on the value of the property. So when you add that onto our cap rates, which might be just on an average retail deal where you're not even increasing the value of the property, 10% plus 5% on a cap rate is a 15% on average return. It makes Washington very attractive. And if we can then go find opportunities where we can get this great appreciation, but push that cap rate up or increase our cash flow, all of a sudden the metrics start getting wild and we're making 20, 30% a year. Normally in most markets, I would say appreciation might not be something that you can count on as much. Right now, I don't see any factors that are going to slow appreciation down in our particular market. Seattle is landlocked by Lake Washington and Puget Sound on one side. It's still only about a 30-minute commute from, Shoreline to Seattle, and it's still booming there. But basically, I'll let you guys in on a secret. You don't even have to be that smart. You buy north or south of the city, you're going to make money on appreciation because we have net migration of population to our city. So there are a lot of opportunities. We're seeing lots of rapid appreciation outside of Seattle, in neighborhoods that were maybe 500 grand neighborhoods are now, almost 800 grand neighborhoods like Linwood, Renton, even Federal Way. I'm starting to see homes go for 700,000, which is crazy. Our appreciation is like rocket fuel, and it's fueled by the fact that there are not enough homes for people to buy. And the homes that people can buy, there's just too many buyers. People who make 150 grand can't even buy in Seattle. So they're moving to Tacoma, they're moving to Everett. And that's going to continue to fuel our appreciation in this market for many years.
I just want to cap that off with saying, if you bought a house in 2012 in Seattle, it's doubled, assuming you did nothing, right? So it's been 93% growth since 2012. And if you just look at 8% a year appreciation, a $500,000 house in 10 years is $1 million. So I know I've experienced that in Tacoma with my properties. Like, my first house I bought for 134 grand. Now, I got it under market value, right? That's what we try to do as investors, find a deal. So I bought it for 134,000. I'm confident I could sell it tomorrow within a week and close within 3 weeks or so for $450,000. So it's more than tripled. That was my first house in October of 2016, a little less than 5 years ago. I bought it on Craigslist, right? So I just don't think you're going to buy a $134,000 house in Detroit, OKC, somewhere in Mississippi for 130 grand, and 5 years later have it triple, right? That's a Seattle Tacoma thing. So I think we probably went past 5 minutes, but appreciation. All right.
You're cut off, Jan. All right, so Cody, I think you and I have the same opinion on this, but I'll start and then maybe you can tag in here. So yeah, guys, appreciation is great until it's a not appreciating market. So Jan, I'd ask you, what happened to your rental portfolio in 2008? Augustus, I'm curious what happened to your rental portfolio between 2008 to 2012. Because guys, I lived that, Cody lived that. And yeah, I bought into this idea that properties doubled every 10 years in the Seattle area until they didn't. And so, yeah, ask me how I know. I bought a duplex in 2007 for $575,000 in Silver Lake, Washington, so Everett market. And I think it went down to about 310 in 2009.
But Jen, real quick, all that time that you had that, how much cash flow were you making from that property?
Zero. Actually, I was feeding it every month.
Right, feeding.
Yeah,
okay.
Don't do that. So all right. So anyways, that's one thing. And the next thing is, can you pay your bills off of appreciation? No. Right. So the downside, so okay, great, you get appreciation in Western Washington, but that doesn't pay your bills. I mean, I think that the downside to that then is you're trading future hoping for future appreciation for essentially zero cash flow. So I want to give you a couple of examples in a couple of markets, because I think that there's this misconception that anywhere outside of Seattle or Washington is like a 3 to 4% appreciation rate. So let's talk about Boise, Idaho. Guys, so for anyone that is in Western Washington and they're thinking, okay, I'm not wanting to invest here for a lot of reasons, which I think we'll get into. Just guys, go across the border. Boise, Idaho, the strongest, I mean, in terms of appreciation, the #1 market that people are moving to, right? Pretty much California is moving to Idaho. So we got some off-market deals. Cody, you bought one, I bought one. I wish I would have bought 5 of them. $185,000, guys, for an A-class brand new duplex. I rented mine. Cody, I think you have the 2 beds. I got the 3 beds, yep. $3,600 a month. So under contract, $385,000. My appraised value, $435,000. If I were to sell that today, it'd probably be $465,000. So instant appreciation, guys, of like, I don't know, 65 grand. The next point I want to talk about, so because Jan threw out Tennessee, which is one of my favorite states to invest. I bought an 8-plex B class built in 1997, guys, for $500,000 today. And that was 18 months ago. Today, if I were to sell that, $700,000. So this misconception that you're not getting appreciation out of state, I don't know who started that. I don't know where it comes from, but that has not been my experience in every single out-of-state market that I've invested in. But the difference is I've focused on areas that are growing. And so certainly we can give a lot of other metrics on markets that are not growing, right? They're losing population. And so they're not appreciating. Cody, I'm going to let you tag on to that because Diana gave me a 2-minute.
Yeah, you bet. No, I love that story because I was involved in real estate at that point in time too. And I bought several properties that we were feeding because it seemed like the right thing to do, right? Hey, appreciation, this market's going to go on forever. And if you've seen the Big Short, you know that only a few people saw that coming, right? And so I don't think that we've got that coming anytime soon, right? I'm not a doomsday sayer. I really don't. I think our market's very healthy. The credit quality is amazing. The same thing won't take it down that took it down last time, probably, but it might be something else, right? Who knew? We thought it might be COVID, right? I was in contract to buy a 42-unit property in Clarksville in March of last year. And I called Jen, I was like, am I stupid for doing this, right? Like, should I cancel this deal and walk away from 50 grand earnest money? Is this thing going to get cut in half, right? Fortunately, we kept going and we bought it. But I've seen that banking on appreciation and what it does to people. And there's a really famous saying about that, right? You don't know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out, right? And so if you're really banking on appreciation, the property doesn't make a lot of sense, cash flow perspective, and you've got a pile of money sunk in it, and then that appreciation doesn't come true, then are you really investing or are you really speculating?
I think what Cody and I are telling you guys is that there's markets that are going to have high appreciation and high cash flow. It's just not in Washington.
I think that's very valid.
Wait, hold on. It is in Western. Well, okay. There's so many things to say to this, but we weren't even going to do it. Okay, let me just start with saying this. All my stuff in Seattle and Tacoma, cash flow is great, and I bought it all in the last 5 years. So there is cash flow in Western Washington. And in Eastern Washington, I have a 11 cap and a 13 cap. So,
but Eastern Washington might as well be Idaho, right? I mean, like, it's not Western Washington. It's a different story over there.
And I think we're talking different asset class too.
We're talking different asset class, yes.
So mobile home parks, I mean, average cap rate is 10%. So if we're talking, we're not comparing apples to apples here.
Sure.
And in the last 5 years, sorry, go on.
An example, you provided what's called forced depreciation. So you said that you can go into a property, renovate it, increase the income, and force the appreciation of the property, which you received as appreciation. In our market, you get appreciation for sitting on your hands. Now, obviously, the investing that we're doing is we're trying to force appreciation too. As an example, I bought a fourplex just like you, but it was here in Seattle, and I bought it for $525,000. I put in $175,000 with $0 invested, which is the minimum you can put in currently. And it cash flowed $4,500 per month, which is about an 8% cap rate. I resold it 3 years later for $1.8 million and made $1 million on one fourplex. I don't think you can do that anywhere outside of Western Washington.
Boom.
Every day. Cody, how much have you made on your 42 unit?
Well, so I bought this was just in the last couple of years, in 42 unit in Clarksville. We paid 2.4 for it. I've probably put about, well, I'll tell you, I put about 12 months worth of all the rents back into it. I've paid a few of the mortgage payments on my own. Some of the rents have actually covered the mortgage payments. So probably about 80 grand, something like that we've put back into it. Today's value with current rents puts it at about 3.5. And next year when we make our next round of rental increases, because I didn't want to really jam people up because of COVID, right? So we took where they were paying now and what the current market was, and we cut it in half and raised them up, and we'll do it again next year. So when we
hold on, Cody, you're raising rents right now?
I did raise rents. Yeah.
Can you do that in Washington?
No, I haven't been able to raise any of my Washington properties yet.
Yeah, Jan, Augie, let me know. Can you raise rents in Washington right now? I forget.
The good news is I don't need to, because I got about 20% appreciation since January.
Cool. But so are you seeing?
Yes, it is cool. I could spend it on a lot of things, like my new blocks of property I'm buying in West Seattle and downtown Edmonds.
I just feel bad that you guys can't raise rents.
To be real, so it sounds like Cody said that property was worth $3.5 million after he sunk money into it, and he bought it for about what was it, $2.4 million?
Yep.
So that's only a $1 million gain on a $2.4 million acquisition. I mentioned $1 million gain on a $795,000 acquisition.
This has been 1 year.
Sure.
But Augie, you can't raise rents right now. So that strategy was from.
Well, the good news is I also don't have to really raise rents because I started out very high. We're renting on average about $3 per square foot here. What's the rent in Clarksville?
I don't know, probably $1.50.
Okay.
But I mean, Augie, so are we talking B class, or what class of property are we talking about? Were they
A class, B class, C class, it don't matter. You just give me a property anywhere north of Seattle.
But it does matter.
Very easy. I just bought half a block of West Seattle.
CapEx kills you.
It all cash flows, and we already made $1 million in 6 months.
Augie, if you had an investor that had 50 grand, what would you tell them to do?
I would say, well, it depends. If they're a first-time home buyer, and
no, they already have their house. They just want to invest in some real estate and make some cash flow, maybe some appreciation. Where do I take my 50 grand?
If I had 50 grand today, I would find a property anywhere north or south of Seattle. Probably in this particular market, I'd be targeting Linwood and or Renton Federal Way, Auburn, that sort of area. I'd find a property that needed to be renovated. I would pull that with one of our great Washington hard money lenders like Certain Lending that allows for 10% down payment and funds 100% of the renovation. I would then renovate that property. And because single family homes in our area sell at very high dollars when they're fixed up, you're going to have the comparable sales to then refinance out that 50K and do what's called a BRRRR investment. With a BRRRR investment, you could possibly invest that $50,000 into a $500,000 or $400,000 total project cost property, get that money back within 6 months, have $0 invested, cash flow, and repeat. Jan and myself, I do a little bit of everything. I got a little bit sad because everybody was BRRRRing properties or flipping properties, so I thought I'd try it out for myself. And I just BRRRRed one on market for 90 days, bought it for $460,000 in Columbia City. Everybody else passed on it. I converted it to a duplex, renovated it. Total in was about 700,000. ARV was 950,000. We were able to pull all of our money out and cash flow about $1,500 per month, which is the entire rent of a property in Oklahoma, let's say, and have about $150,000 equity generated just then. That doesn't count the appreciation. That's just the $150,000 of generated capital equity over that 6-month period. Now, I decided to sell that because I don't personally like holding rental properties. I like to make a lot of money, and I like to take that money and put it into cash flowing assets. So my goal is velocity of capital, make as much money as possible, which you can do in high appreciating markets that have very desirable liquid property. And then once I have a bunch, I might buy your whole portfolio, but I won't have to do all the work accumulating it.
Sweet, good answer. I love it. I love the BRRRR style investment. I love Certain Lending, and I don't know if they have a first-time investor program with 10% down, but if they do, I'm going to start referring even more over to my buddy Nee at Certain Lending. I love it. Now, the unfortunate part is what about somebody with 25 grand?
What was that?
What about somebody with 25 grand?
Well, I'll speak on that one. I mean, to be fair, I started 5 years ago. But 5 years ago, I started with $23,000 in savings. And then right before I quit my job, I took a personal loan of $25,000. So if you only have 25 grand, you're going to need to go get more money. Like, go get a personal loan. And then I also took a loan against my 401k, another 30 grand. So I had about 90 grand. But with that 90 grand, I bought my first 10 units in Tacoma and Seattle. And that was through buying owner-occupied properties. Okay, obviously you can only do that once for yourself. You can buy an owner-occupied property once every 12 months. So I bought my first one, and then I figured, okay, well, I'm ready. I found the next deal, but and I still have money because my first house only cost me 9 grand all in. It was a 5% down loan, and I got a seller credit. And then the next one, I figured, okay, well, I can't get another one in my name as owner-occupied. Hey, my brother doesn't own a house yet. Let's buy him this. Hey, Ludic, you're buying this fourplex now, 3.5% down. So that one was 14 grand all in. And then I figured, okay, well, I'm still finding deals, but I already occupy a property. Hey, my mom doesn't have a property yet. Hey, mom, you're moving into this triplex. That one was hard money with about 30 grand down. So yeah, you can get creative, but you do have to get creative. That in Washington, you're either going to have to go away from Seattle and Tacoma, or you're going to have to get creative with how you structure these deals. And in today's market, it is more difficult because it's so competitive. Your FHA 3.5% down on a property isn't going to be looking too spicy for a seller because they have options in this market.
We're getting a few of those accepted, but not as many as we used to. That's for sure.
Let me flip it back. So let's say that we go ahead and go to the out-of-state component, and you have that $25,000 that you're investing into this property, and it's an investment property, so you're probably putting down 25%. Maybe you're doing the BRRRR strategy, I don't know. But how are you going to be able to pay for all the maintenance and upkeep and team to manage it when you put your entire $25,000 into something you probably can't get your money out?
I mean, Augie, you jumped on the call, and Diana and I were going over a deal where she's going to have essentially zero into it and not have to do anything. So, I mean, you can do BRRRR out of state. I mean, I'm just finishing one on a 6-plex that was purchased for $415. I think the renovation was like 30 grand. It appraised for $530. I mean, again, solid deal, built in 1997. I mean, guys, these deals are out here, B class, fully rented, easy to do. I mean, we have investors doing this all day long. What I'm not seeing is your everyday average investor doing what you guys are talking about in Western Washington. It takes a lot more capital. It is incredibly difficult to find these deals. Whereas, I mean, we get maybe 10 in our inbox every day in markets that people are actually moving to, where you can actually increase rents. Augie, to your earlier point, those deals that I was giving you examples on, those were not forced appreciation. There was actually nothing done to those properties, but they appreciated because they were in good areas and they were good buys. So yeah, I mean, I'm seeing, every single day investors that are new, living where they live. Sometimes they live in California.
Did you buy that sixplex that was $415K with $25,000 down payment?
No.
Okay.
No. Why would I?
We do have a lot of investors that are getting started, right? And so that's the thing. I have a personal mission to help a bunch of people get their passive income from rentals as a retirement vehicle. And a lot of the folks that I talk to about it, they don't have a couple $100,000 to get started, right? They've got 50 grand, they got 25 grand. So, and they look around town, right? And some of them don't have the skills to do the burst style. They don't want to do that. They just want to buy something, put a tenant in it and collect the checks and let it rest, right? And so that burst style is awesome. It's how I got my start, right? Like, again, I started investing in 2007, 8, 9, doing some flips, doing some burrs, doing the exact same thing. And I was hustling and I was out there swinging hammers and I was involved, right? So a lot of our investors, they don't have that ability or they don't want to. And so the ability to go out and buy $100,000 duplex in Wisconsin or a $400,000 fourplex in Tennessee and put some money there and just let it sit and rest, invest, and have a predictable cash flow that they know is coming and not have to. And one of the other things I love about it is you guys sound like you're very active investors. And I love that. And I am too in certain instances. But a lot of our investors come to me because they want to quit their job. They want to go travel. They want to be less active in their work or their investments. And so these higher cash flowing properties that granted have lower appreciation are more predictable cash flow generators for them to be able to put their hands off and just let somebody else take the wheel and collect the checks. And sure, that's the audience that we've been serving a lot. And that's why I like the out-of-state investment markets that still get some appreciation, but have really predictable cash flows.
Yeah, but you're talking about locking up $25,000. So if I only have $25,000, I don't have enough to retire. I don't have enough to make transformational wealth for my family. I don't have enough to buy a mansion. I don't have enough to buy a boat. So if I go put that 25K into a 100 grand property in Oklahoma, that's a 10 cap. How much am I getting on that? I mean, a 10 cap is going to get me maybe, I don't know, $500 a month on that 100 grand over after all expenses. That's not going to change my life. So I'm getting whatever that is on that $25,000. I can't go buy another 100 grand property. So in order to actually make the investment work, to put myself in the beach behind myself, I got to be able to get access to that 25 grand capital so I can go again and again and again and again and again. And if I get that 500 grand on that property in Oklahoma, so I get $500 a month for, 10 years, that's only $60,000 over 10 years. Maybe it goes up 20%. So I get an extra 20K on top. I mean, I could buy one property in Tacoma and make 80K in 2 years, probably.
I hope there's nobody from Oklahoma watching, because Oklahoma is really
I know you're dogging on them hard. No,
getting dogged today.
The idea there is that you keep doing it, right? So they're not going to get all their money back, but that's not what they're looking for, right? They want to put some money in it, an investment that's going to throw off cash flow and keep doing that. And so they get 10 or 20 or 30 units. And then now, 30 units times $500 a month. Now that's something you could retire on. It might take 5 or 10 years, but that's their plan, right? You have a more elevated plan or an escalated plan. I think it's great, but it's not for everybody, right? That not everybody's going to jump on that.
I mean, the other thing to point out too is how hands-on do you want to be versus how hands-off, and then also the individual's goals. So to Cody's point, yeah, we have investors come to us all the time that say, look, I'm giving myself 5 years. I want to retire early. I want to spend time with my family. This is the path to do it. They can either go burr strategy out of state, like a lot of our investors are doing. Pete's on the call. Pete's, I don't know, maybe 14, 15 burrs in, just got started, like 2 years ago. So we have investors that are doing this all the time, or there's other investors that are just getting started that wants more turnkey. And I think, Augie, I got to argue that your strategy of doing all these things. I mean, Augie, you're a full-time investor, right?
Nope.
I mean, you think
I'm a
that it's a
full-time
viable strategy for somebody that's,
investor.
what's that?
Full-time mortgage originator, part-time investor.
Okay, great. So you're full-time in real estate industry.
Yes.
I think what you're suggesting, by the way, again, I love it. Guys, like I lived this life for 9 years. I was in Seattle flipping, developing, doing all these things. But the downside is that doesn't actually get you to the beach for very long. You might be able to take 1 week off, but if you want freedom for the rest of your life, then you've got to be building these passive income streams. And I also, there was a really good comment in the chat that somebody mentioned that, they buy in Washington for some potential appreciation, but then they get cash flow out of state. And so I think the other thing that investors need to think about is location diversification. So I think Cody and I, having lived through the Great Recession and owning rentals that unfortunately did not continue to appreciate, which is our winning strategy in Western Washington. For us, as we've kind of grown up as investors, it's important to have diversification across different asset classes, across different locations. So something happens in Seattle, my Tennessee rentals are going to be insulated. Something happens in Tennessee and my Texas rentals are probably going to be insulated from that. But guys, we're seeing a great population migration shift. And I think this idea that people are going to want to live in the coast and pay the amount of money that it costs to live in the coast, where then you're getting high crime rates and all of these other issues. I'm seeing a lot of people pack their bags, head to Nashville, Tennessee, where you can drink on the street, live your best life, pay zero.
And when it does crash, you can drink on the street. Yeah.
Wasn't Seattle just the fastest growing big city in the entire United States? Don't we have two of the richest people?
It's so funny. Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the metric. I mean,
import-export businesses. Don't we have aerospace engineering? Don't we have manufacturing? Don't we have tech? Don't we have medical? Don't we have bioscience in South Lake Union? I mean, what businesses are affecting our area that you guys have in the external states?
Well, the problem is nobody wants to live there. So
if nobody wants to live here, why is this the fastest growing big city in America?
I don't know that metric is correct. I think it depends on the graph. I mean,
I know it's probably from a news source that's not worthy, but I'll tell you what, that's what the data point just came out. Fastest growing big city in America, Seattle.
Jan, have we silenced you? We give Jan a chance.
I mean, listen, I think we beat this point down quite a ways. I would like Jennifer and Cody to have an opportunity to make a point that we can then counter. So why don't you guys take the next 5 minutes about anything you want, or why kind of your favorite reasons for out of state, and we'll counter that.
Go for it, Cody.
Well, shoot, I think we kind of we branched off of appreciation and talked about all the things that I love about out of state. So the notes that I had was barrier to entry, right? I do feel like it's easier to get into out of state investing because the costs are lower. I do feel like the landlord tenant laws are more friendly in some of the other states that we invest in. And also, let's see here, what are my notes? I mentioned it, but the predictability of cash flow, right? Being able to say like, hey, I'm buying this property, my rents are going to be this, and rents can ebb and flow for sure, right? There's city of Seattle had some rent reductions. San Francisco, I think their rents were down 34% year over year, right? Like it's not always guaranteed, but it's a little more stable than that appreciation piece. I had a lot of friends that lost properties in the 2008, 9, 10 bubble where they were just kept buying rental properties because the values were only going to go up and they were feeding these properties and it didn't make sense to hold on to them anymore. Now, in the end, they were silly for letting them go, right? They'd be worth a ton more. So one of the things that I like, and again, maybe this is as we're approaching an hour, we can come together on this, is I've got a fair number of properties here. I've got some investors that have bought properties here 5, 6, 7 years ago. And what we're doing is we're using them as cash machines to go buy more properties in places where they can get good cash flow, right? So I got a gal that she lives in Sonoma. She's got a Mill Creek rental. It's just going through the roof, right? And she's like, well, hey, I don't want to sell it, but I would like to get involved in some of these out-of-state places. We said, okay, you can do a 1031 exchange and sell it and buy this many properties, or you do a cash out refinance, sell and don't sell it, don't trigger any tax possibilities, and just lock in some cash, go invest it in this other marketplace. She pulled out about $200,000, cost her about $1,000 a month, that $200,000 she turned into $4,000 a month passive cash flow from investments in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So she still owns in Western Washington. She's still going to get the amazing appreciation that we're going to have, provided it keeps going. But now she also has that cash flow. So that's a really great strategy for somebody that already owns property here. But if you don't already own property here and you want to be a retail investor buying on the open market, putting 20 to 25% down on a $700,000 single family in Linwood, that's not going to cash flow, right? And a lot of our investors are looking for cash flow right away. Will it make money on appreciation? Yes, more than likely. I bought a fourplex in Des Moines, Washington, and it's been 4 years. We just sold it. I didn't make a dime on it on rent, right? The rent barely covered the mortgage payment and all the fix up and the different tenant improvements that we had to do. But I sold it and I made about 60% in 4 years. So pretty good appreciation, but that was the only way I made any money on that, right? So our clients are looking for predictable cash flow, and that's what I feel like the out-of-state gives us.
Okay. In terms of barrier to entry, I do want to say that I think you can't execute on the strategy that I was able to execute on by investing out of state, right? So like if you want to start an investment and get your hands a little bit dirty, or just be able to get into your first property that does have big appreciation and cash flow potential, the best way to do that with little money down is exactly what I did: buy an owner-occupied property with an owner-occupied loan at 3.5% to 10% down. You can't do that out of state, right?
Yep.
And you can't manage roommates out of state if you're going to do a house hack and you want to rent rooms, or do an Airbnb. If you do have time to do something a little bit more active, you most certainly can cash flow in Seattle or Linwood on a $700,000 house. You just have to get creative. You got to turn it into a duplex. You got to rent rooms. You got to do a sober living home. You have to do an adult family home. You have to do something creative, right? So it does take a little more forethought. It's not as easy, but when it does work, you have the cash flow. Like all of my properties cash flow here, great. And the appreciation is awesome, right? So it's like, if you can make it work in Seattle and Tacoma and Linwood every single time over outside, because you can get the cash flow and the appreciation. So in terms of barrier to entry, I think that's something that I wanted to share. Augie, you have anything to add to that?
Can I real quick, are you doing that right now, right? Like, because I know you said 5 years ago, right? Like 5 years ago is a mountain of time, right? And
yes, you
pointed out Seattle's doubled in the last 5 years, right? And 100%. Right. So can you do that right now? Yeah,
so I've bought, so like the last house I bought was in Columbia City, also close to Augie's house there.
When?
It was on market for 90 days. It was overpriced, right? Here's the thing. There's not going to be 10 of these every day available to you, like in your inbox, right? You have to do the work to find it. But I know how to spot a deal, or I know how to do the volume of offers required to get a good deal. So this thing was listed for $700. I offered $600. They accepted it. And then I negotiated another 30 grand. So we got it for $570. We put in $160. So $570 plus $160.
Who has $160,000? Right?
Yeah. So we,
as a first-time home buyer.
Well, as a first-time home buyer, you could get a rehab loan for something like that, and put down 10%. So 10% of 700 would be like 70 grand as a cost.
Assuming you can find a seller that would agree to that.
Well, this one is on market for 90 days, so they're going to be flexible, right? Again, you have to get more. You have to start. You can't just start competing with everyone on market. I mean, this thing was sitting, and that's one of my strategies. This is a big value nugget for you people interested in in-state. Don't compete. Go look at stuff that's been sitting, because now they're going to start considering your FHA offer, your 10% down rehab loan offer that's a little more complex, right? So I was able to make that one work, and I bought that about 8 months ago. Yeah, I'm into it about 700. Wait, what did I say? 570 plus 160. Let me get you guys exact math. 570 plus 160 is 730. That house today, I would say, is worth what, $1 million, Augie?
At least. million.
Yeah, so $1,050,000. So I have about 350, 400,000 in equity that I created through a 4-month renovation. That thing is cash flowing fantastic. One of my best cash flowing properties because it was a 3,000 square foot house where I converted the basement into a second unit. That's 1,200 square feet in the basement, 1,800 square feet upstairs. I bring in $49.50 a month in rents, and my mortgage is $32.50. Augie has that mortgage. Does that sound about right?
That's about right.
Yeah, and of course there's expenses and property management and maintenance, but still cash flows. I mean, over $1,000 a month after expenses. And yeah, I found that in the last year, Cody, to answer your question. So yes, it was hard to find that. It was difficult to find that. I will say that, right?
Fine, but both Jan and I found them at the exact same time within 5 blocks, where mine was a comp for Jan's on his appraisal report.
Yeah. Yes, more difficult to find, but if you can get cash flow here, then you're not gonna, like, I mean, on a single family home, where else you're gonna get $350K in equity gain in a year? I mean, it's just difficult to find out of state, I think, on a single family home.
Yeah, my only other kind of rebuttal to that is also the age of property. So Jan, how old was that property?
That was 1940.
1940. All right. So an older house, you had to do a full renovation, and you somehow find 160 grand. I don't know a whole lot of first-time investors that have 160 grand laying around. But yeah, guys, I mean, if you have that and you want to live in Seattle, I mean, Jan, I agree. I think the biggest difference, back to the original question, was, why out of state versus in state? I mean, essentially, you have to think about it. So Cody and I spend zero on marketing. We haven't talked about your marketing budget, Jan and Augie, to find these deals. I think Jan, you'd mentioned at some point that you spend about $1,000 to $3,000 a month, trying to find deals, right? So Cody and I spend zero on marketing. We're buying B-class multifamily properties, a lot of them built in the 90s, guys. So our CapEx and our maintenance is, I mean, we still factor in for it. I mean, at least 10% of rents, right? We're able to get, at least double-digit returns from day one, forced appreciation on a lot of deals. And then we're investing in areas where people are moving to, not moving from. We're also able to increase rents right now. I think Seattle, is maybe 15% down year over year. Maybe they're more than that. I don't know.
11, I think.
When you're going to be able to raise rents again in Washington, there's continues to be more, rules and regulations placed upon landlords, related to, I think Seattle, you can't discriminate against criminal activity or prior criminal convictions. We don't have that out of state. We don't have to deal with, 60-day, notice to terminate tenancy. We can do that on a 20-day. There's so many more favorable landlord tenant laws when you go out of state that we just don't have to deal with. So in my opinion, buying B-class assets built in the 90s and appreciating areas where people are moving to with favorable landlord tenant laws, getting double-digit returns where we're going to be all in at less than 60 a door. I don't know. For my strategy of, look, these things are just little cash machines, so I can travel the world with my family and help others do the same. It works really well. I just can't find that in Western Washington. But if you guys can find it, I mean, absolutely. I think we all agree that we're here to kind of share our knowledge and expertise and really just want to see people taking action. It's not about, one way is better than the other. But I do know a lot of investors are thinking, where should I put my money right now? And I don't know about you, but I want to put my money where I'm going to be treated better by the local government and not have to deal with restrictions coming down the line.
That's fair. I want to put my money where it's going to make the most money. So
yeah. I think we all agree on that. Right? we just have different opinions on the where.
And just to confirm, Seattle is #2 fastest growing in America. So I don't know if people are actually, because it seems like,
I think Boise beat it.
It seems like people are moving to Seattle.
So did I win that? Did I win that argument?
Yeah.
On the very first topic?
Yeah. Also, from the standpoint of tenant land law, there's actually lots of good municipalities around Seattle. So you might not have to invest in Seattle. You might be wanting to invest in Edmond, Shoreline, etc. I do believe that the COVID restrictions will be lifted here shortly. I think Seattle's the furthest, extending out to, I believe, September. But the other issue that we don't have to deal with our tenants here is our average tenant has a 740 credit score in Seattle. They usually make about $150,000 or more in income, and they have more job stability. So usually we're seeing people come in with multiple months of reserves in their account. So even if they were to transfer jobs, they have the ability to pay their rent. So I do really like that from the tenant base here as well.
That's a good point, Augie. I'd be curious to hear about what Cody's and Jennifer's experience has been with tenants and evictions. Now, I only have 85 units. They're all in Washington, but I've never had to do a single eviction. I've only had to do one cash for keys. It was a meth user, and we gave her enough money. She could probably get high for at least 5 to 8 days, and she was happy to leave. We didn't have to do a formal eviction, but still, I have over 200 tenants across the portfolio, and I've never had to evict a single one. And I think that's partially good screening, but that's partially what Augie said, is there is great stable employment, and tenants, especially in Western Washington, are really solid. I've gotten fortunate with Eastern Washington as well, where we've had again solid stable employment and jobs, and never had to do an eviction. So how about out of state? Have you guys had to deal with that? I know you guys have been doing the rental thing longer, so it's going to be a little bit different, but still curious.
Yeah, I mean, no issue. I mean, the only issues I've ever had was inherited tenants, and that happens in Washington, and it happens everywhere. But to Augie's point, so I have an apartment complex in Irving, Texas. Median income is about $98,000 a year. And we actually lost some tenants because they went and bought houses. And so I think that that's the other downside to tenants with a 740 credit score and a 6-figure average income, is at some point they're going to leave, and that some point is probably going to be sooner than a tenant who.
The problem is our average house is $800,000, so they can't buy it.
What was that?
Our average house is $800,000, so they can't buy anything. We trap our 150K earners in apartments because they can't afford housing. I think 150 grand qualifies you for what, Cody? 700 max?
But you just said that everyone can house hack in Western Washington. But what happened to the house hacks that are so easily available?
Oh, the house hack, they're all available. You can go do that. We just showed you 2 that we did. I mean, unfortunately, I don't have unlimited income, so I can't buy like 20. But we have been providing our clients who get pre-approved by me at Cardinal Financial. We've actually put our clients into multiple house hacks over the last 6 months. Several of our house hack clients are generating, the last one I did just generates $2,800 per month off a property that they picked up for 600 grand with a 5% down payment and did no renovation. I'd say that that's a killer win. And most likely, as the property appreciates and continues to move towards Everett, that home that she purchased will probably go from a 600 grand property to $800,000 property while she collects a $2,800 check per month.
Good for them.
Right.
The downside is they're leaving those apartments to go buy.
It's sat on the market for, again, 90 days. I only buy on market. I have zero marketing budget. I only buy properties on market or that are brought to me from an agent.
You guys do have to understand, Augie is a bit of an anomaly. He's like, top 1% mortgage loan originators in the country, and just like a killer investor, right? So I'm not saying anyone can go replicate Augie's results, but if you work hard and you study a specific market, you definitely can find these deals on market too. I've done it as well. Augie and I have multiple times got caught up in offering on the exact same property that was sitting for months. And we just happened to try to make it work at the same time. So yeah.
You stole Alaska from me.
You stole me from me. What do you mean?
Yeah, all right.
Yes, Cody is also a top mortgage producer.
Cody's the man.
Okay, guys, so we're going on an hour here. I do want time for questions. So guys, if you have questions as attendees, please put them in the chat below, and we will do our best to answer them, whether it's in-state, out-of-state, both. We're here for you guys, so feel free to drop them in the bottom, and we'll also try to answer some of the questions that were asked in the chat previously. Let's see. What issues do you have dealing with properties that are geographically a long ways away. Jennifer and Cody, you guys want to take that one?
Yeah, I can start. The reason I got comfortable with out-of-state investing was one, following Jen, I knew there was a great team in each one of these marketplaces. And that means, real estate agent, property manager. Property managers usually come with handyman, appliance people, all the things that you need. But also I bought a property in Auburn at a foreclosure auction, right? Killer deal, bought it cheap, sold it really for a bunch of money. But I owned that property for about 6 years and I went to it 2 times. I went to it the Saturday after I bought it on an auction Friday. And then I went to it after the contractor did all of his work and did the walkthrough with a little punch list with the property manager and told him, hey, get to work, right? That property, because I bought it quite a while ago, I bought it super cheap at a great auction. It actually made money, in Western Washington, I made some money. I'm going to say it's possible. And it went up crazy, but I couldn't get the rents any higher, right? Like I bought it for $368. I put about 100 into it and I sold it for 1.1 and some change. But at the end, every time I have a tenant that would go, I tried to raise the rent $50 and I just couldn't get it, right? Nobody would pay more than what I was getting, but the property value kept going up and up and up and up, and I couldn't get any more rent. So I like to calculate our internal rate of return and our cash on cash and our cap rates, but I feel like you also have to calculate your return on equity, right? So as your property value goes up and maybe your expenses maybe go up a little bit, but your rents don't really go up, your return on equity starts going down and down and down. And that's where maybe you do a cash out refinance, keep your cash machine in Finney Ridge, and then go buy some more properties somewhere else, do some other things. But the long and the short of that story was I bought this property in Auburn. It was an hour drive from my house, and I went to it 2 times in 4.5 years, right? So to me, I thought, well, boy, if I can spend this same money in Oklahoma or Tennessee or one of these other markets where I can get double or maybe 2.5 times the same rent for the same money spent, if it's an hour away or a 4-hour flight, to me, it didn't really matter, right? Because in Auburn, I had a great property manager. I knew they took good care of it. I knew they were doing everything they could to protect my property and give me good tenants. So if I had a great team in place, I felt like it really didn't matter how close it was or how far away it was.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we actually found ourselves spending more time when we were living in Western Washington on our local rentals than we were out of state. And I think it's because it's like, well, this rental's a half hour from us. Something breaks, send my husband over there, no problem.
Right.
As you start to accumulate more rentals, it actually does start to become a problem. My husband retired in 2014, and then he said, wait a second, I'm working more for us on our rentals than I am when I was working full time. And so out of state, it actually forces you to learn how to succeed through others. So Augie, Jan, to your point, I think you were asking about, the viability of renovating and doing BRRRR out of state. It's actually easier, in my opinion, to do these renovations out of state because you have these local teams who are going to help you out. Now that requires a property management company that's going to do project management for you. But the other benefit, guys, is contractors are so much more affordable out of state than they are in Seattle. I mean, when we were trying to get anything done in Seattle, it's like trying to bribe people to get us bids. Whereas, in Tennessee and Texas, we have 3 people go out, all very professional, get us bids. It's, $5,000 to turn a unit, which would probably cost us 15 in Seattle. And so kind of going back to that financial barrier to entry, it's just so much more expensive to get things done in an expensive market because these contractors got to live too, right? They're probably living in those $800,000 houses and they've got to pay their guys and wages are higher and all of these things are higher. So yeah, it's really easy for us to kind of manage our portfolio, mostly because we're just kind of checking in with property managers and making sure that they're taking care of the property. So at the end of the day, it's more passive. It's easier for us to scale. We own properties that we've never seen. We've never been to, in cities that I've never been to, right? And they're cash cows. So it's absolutely possible. Whereas it sounds like Jan and Augie, you're saying, in Western Washington, you really got to work hard. You got to, do all of these things and kind of, turn over these stones and find these deals. And it sounds like there's a lot more work involved to get a great deal, which may or may not be possible there in Western Washington versus out of state. I mean, it's, in my opinion, because I've done both, it's easier to do it out of state for sure.
Okay, before we take another question, I actually would like to take this opportunity. So while we still remember what was said, at least hopefully, if you guys could vote on who you think won this debate, in-state or out-of-state. So attendees, if you believe in-state won, just write a 1 in-state. And if you believe 2, write out of. If you believe out-of-state won, write a 2.
Ooh, looking good. 1 and 2.
You can't pick both.
We all win.
All right, I guess I don't make the rules. You can pick both. Don't let me stop you from picking both.
Depends on your. I love it.
Everyone, please vote, and we're gonna tally these, and there's gonna be a big prize for the winners. So it's a hug from me. That's the prize.
Big prize.
Hope you like it. If we win, then I'm just gonna do one of these.
I'm gonna vote for out of state because I don't want to invest anymore. I'll give it to these guys.
Augie's made too much money here. He's done investing.
I know, Augie, I'm telling you, you go over the border. I mean, it's probably taking you two years on average to get a building permit for your development. Is that right?
What's a permit?
For a permit? Building permit?
What's a permit? That's a joke about renovating homes that are not permitted.
No, for your developments, right? I'll hook you up in Idaho. You can get a permit in 30 days.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not even. There's no point talking about permits here. It's so ridiculous.
It's a nightmare.
Everybody in Western Washington, do not invest in development and building unless you have years and lots of money. If you do have lots of money, go ahead and do it. And time. I mean, you're going to need 3 years.
All right, looks like we've got most people to have voted. So thank you guys for being here and thank you for voting. Let's take some more questions. Jennifer, how do I find out-of-state cash cow that you're referring to?
Depends on what you're looking for, David. So get clarity on what a good deal looks like to you, what your goals are, how much you have to invest. Or you can call us and we can help you out. We have a community of about 300 investors that are doing this all over the country. And it's really fun actually, because it's not just all, Mark, it's not just all people from Washington, right? We have investors all across the country. A lot of them have moved from Washington to other states. But yeah, so back to your point. So I do a lot of market research. I want to look and find where people are moving to, right? So there's more people moving to that market than are leaving. I'm looking for rent appreciation. I also go back and I look to see what happened in the last recession. So guys, I mean, Seattle, depending on the area, lost anywhere from 20 to maybe 30% of the value. At least that was my experience. Come on, you didn't own rentals back then.
I've seen the data. There's no way. I guarantee you Seattle didn't touch anywhere near 30% loss.
I owned them.
Maybe.
I was like, we lived it. Alan, you were in high school, but we lived it. No. So yeah, I like to see what happened in the last recession to other markets, right? So Nashville
Yes.
was
And
pretty
also
flat and then
understand
increased.
what that recession was, guys. Just remember what happened in 2008, as Cody can tell you, it was pure fraud. People were manipulating bank statements, manipulating pay stubs. Even the loans that were fraudulent, that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were underwriting, had a go fast program where all you had to do is say, Cody made $100 grand a month. And they'd say, okay, I'll trust you. He sounds like a great guy, and give you a free loan. So what happened there was very, 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 very different. And that particular thing is not going to happen again in real estate.
I totally agree. And something will, right? Like nobody saw that coming other than about 3 guys in The Big Short. Watch it if you didn't live that or you lived it and didn't understand what happened. You can watch Margot Robbie explain it to you in a bubble bath, and you will, trust me, you will not be excited to watch the movie.
Sorry to interject, Jeff.
All right, I'm looking at a 10-year chart of the Seattle real estate market. At the high, it was at, this isn't an exact, but I just see a chart. looks like it was a median home price in Seattle of about 415. And then in the bottom of 2012, well, okay, after the crash in 2010, it went down to about 370, which is what, not 30%. And then it went down to about 350, 340.
That just like a lot of
We
things.
owned them.
The stats don't always tell the tale, right? If you were at the war, the casualties would look a little more bleak than what you saw on the tape, right? I lived it. I bought a house in 2006 for about 900 grand. At the bottom, it was worth 6, right? I ended up selling it for 1.15 about 10 years later. So it came back, and that's what I told everybody in that window of time too. Like, hey, hang on, it's going to come back. The problem is, again, like I said, you don't know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out, right? So if I couldn't have afforded that house during that window of time, I'd have lost it at 600 grand, right? 100%. I had clients that bought new construction houses down in Federal Way-ish area down that way, and they bought it 400. The same model match was selling for 200 a year later, right? So yes, in Seattle, and maybe again that skewed data in the tail of the tape there, maybe it looks like 10%. But that was not what we lived in the other markets around. We used to call Marysville Scarysville because nobody wanted to buy anything there at the auction because it just was going down a couple % every month.
It was also very quick though. If you look at the rebound here, we were one of the last areas to crash. I would say that even when I came in, I'm younger too. I didn't get into real estate until 2008 because I couldn't get a job doing anything because of the financial collapse. And, it felt like Seattle held value all the way through 2000, almost 9. And then it really started going down 2009, 2010. And then I remember it was like at that point, California that had gone down 2007 kind of started coming back. And so at the end of 2010, I was screaming from the rooftop, buy, 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 buy. And I think that most of you probably did the same thing and jumped on and tried to get people to buy. But, we also have fast recovery. So fast recovery. If you look at the other areas, Seattle's pretty good.
All right. How do you find a trustworthy property management and contracting company when you've never been to the city you're investing in? I know I'm arguing for in-state, and I could technically go to the city before I buy the property, and I do sometimes, often. But, for example, we bought 2 mobile home parks in Eastern Washington. I've never been to Moses Lake before. I had no reason to go to Moses Lake. So I'll speak on this even if it's in-state and if you've never been to the city before, finding good people is just like finding good deals. I think, you have to do volume. And so when we wanted to hire a property manager, we put out ads, and then we interviewed about 30 property managers before we settled on a top few. Then we gave them test tasks, right? Litmus tests, like, hey, can you do these simple tasks online and in person? Are you reliable? Do you pick up your phone? Do you show up on time? Are you people oriented, right? So just like finding a good deal, looking through a lot of volume and talking to a lot of people is the best way to find quality managers, or I would say probably quality contractors as well. There you have to do a little bit more, giving them some jobs to test them out. But yeah, I would say it's similar to finding good deals. Just do the volume, and you will eventually find someone good.
I have a document, Dana, maybe you can find the link, 35 questions to ask a property manager. I like to interview a lot of property managers. I'd like to get the contacts from my real estate agents who are investor agents, not a regular residential agent, right? Because they find the best deals. So that would be my recommendation. And I also like to look at what they're marketing, right? So what kind of properties they have out there. Do they have good photos? Is there like missing information? But yeah, maybe we can find that 35 questions to ask your property managers. You guys can check that out.
Sweet. Thanks for sharing that, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Let's see, who else has some questions? When you said you need 3 years for permits, is that developing something like an apartment or also single family homes and duplexes, Augie?
In Western Washington, it will depend on your municipality. For single family homes, I think that you want to plan on a year if you're doing any pro formas. If this is your first development, you're going to want to plan on 1.5 years to make sure that you're safe. And then probably same time frame for the construction, a year to year and a half if you want to be safe. So for single family homes, townhomes, things of that nature, we pencil those for 3 years. For things like apartment buildings, it's going to be 2.5 is the average turn time on permits. So if it's your first time, you better do 3.5 years because apartments are really difficult if you don't know what you're doing. That time horizon is probably going to be a 5-year for apartment construction.
Awesome. Okay. Let's see. Dimitri said, speaking about appreciation, we can get forced appreciation in any market.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Forced appreciation.
Forced appreciation is what makes real estate the best investment ever. You simply find something that is undervalued or being valued at its current value based on its current rent or current status. And then you know exactly how you can increase that rent or status through renovation and the cost of that renovation. And if that creates a margin, you then get profit or forced appreciation. So unlike a stock where I have to guess which one's going to go up, I can say this home should be renting for $3,000 a month, and $3,000 a month is valued at 5% cap rate. So if I take it from $1,500 a month to $3,000 a month, I'm going to get a nice little spread.
Not to mention if you can lower your expenses, right? You can all raise rents or lower expenses. And that's what we did in Clarksville. Was there was a lot of extra expenses that didn't need to be there. So we shaved some of those down. We put in low flow water stuff. I mean, there's a lot of LED lights in the shared areas. Like there's lots of things you can do to lower the expenses on a property that was mismanaged by a mom and pop shop or something like that. So you come in, lower expenses, raise the rent, and bam, you've really created a lot of extra value.
Proper management's key. Good job.
All right, Mark asks, it sounds like if you don't have a lot of money, you could either find partners to invest with locally or invest out of town with contacts that have boots on the ground there, both of which have risks. Could both sides talk about vetting, building, and overseeing the team? Yeah, sure. I mean, in-state, it's certainly partners. I mean, I've found partners through Wari, right? Just put out there what you would like to do and what strength and value you bring to a potential partnership, and see if other people can fill the gaps that you aren't so strong at. That's an obvious way to find partners. Go to networking meetups. In terms of having boots on the ground, same thing. I mean, it's that one, like I said, takes volume with talking to people for property management, trying out a bunch of different contractors, seeing who does quality work at a reasonable price. And I'm also working on partnering, as Augie has done, with a builder, so we can do some new construction together and split it. So yeah, there's multitude of ways you can partner or find people. I personally love, meeting people in person. So that's the benefit of being here locally is, I can go out and see people, and if I really need to get something done, I can go sit down on someone's desk and sit there until they have it done. That's not always pleasant, but if I need to do it, I can. And so that's what I've done. Augie, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, partners key. You're going to want to make sure you see the work that they do, the quality of the work. I think communication is important. If you don't have good communication with the person or team that's going to be doing your project, don't expect it to get better when things get hairy. And I'd rather have somebody who's a little bit more expensive or might be getting a little bit more equity, who I know is going to fulfill their obligation and make my investment a success. If I put $1 into something, I want to make sure I get $1 back minimum.
Cool. Anyone else have questions? Char said, for both viewpoints, how do you think a market shift, recession, inflation, etc., will affect your portfolio? Jennifer, you want to kick us off on that one?
Yeah, so I feel pretty confident about the fact that I have diversification across asset class and then also location diversification. I mean, the likelihood of another recession happening is very strong, right? I mean, essentially, we're probably in a recession now, right? And I don't know that it's going to get much better. So we'll see how things play out. But yeah, knowing that I keep a debt coverage ratio of about 1.6, meaning, my net rental income is 60% higher than my debt payments. And so a lot of investors don't talk about that. We talk a lot about appreciation and cash flow and all these things, but debt coverage ratio and balance sheet are incredibly important metrics, I think, for the kind of to maintain a healthy business, really a healthy rental portfolio. That's pretty conservative. But again, I want to go into this with a conservative approach because I lived through 2008 and had all of those negative cash flowing rentals and underwater rentals. So I think that would be my advice to you is look at your debt coverage ratio, build in some location diversification. I also prefer nicer, newer rentals, right? So I think that, as tenants are kind of changing, where they live, kind of what's important to them. Right now, it's a lot of like amenities, Wi-Fi, high-speed internet, small yards so that they can, take their dogs out and their kids out. I mean, COVID really kind of changed a lot of different things, so the trends are different. So I like to focus on buying assets that are going to appeal to those type of tenants. So those, kind of B-class tenants where the values are going to go up, the tenants are going to continue to pay rent and the rents are going to go up. So that would be my advice. Look at debt coverage ratio, look at your balance sheet, run your P&Ls so that you know exactly the health of your rental portfolio, and then diversify across asset classes and locations.
Nice.
I put it in the chat too, real quick, Jan, sorry. I put it in the chat too, but I've been going to Matthew Gardner, chief economic advisor for Windermere for several years, and he's promoted this chart about interest rates and house appreciation over like the last 60 years, 70 years, I think it was. And in every window where he overlaid the recession timeframes, interest rates went down and home prices actually stayed stable or went up, all except for in the Great Recession from 2006-ish to 11. Mm-hmm. So if home prices go up and rates go down, it should be good for your portfolio.
Yeah, I think, I've always been a buy and hold guy, right? Like I've made any of the wealth I have, and it's all on paper. So don't come to my house and rob me because I don't have any cash here. All my wealth is in equity and properties, right? And so this isn't realized, but all the money that I have made, I'm coming up on $2 million for net worth, and it's just been by buying, properties here in Washington over the last 5 years. That's all been growing kind of in the background, but that's not what I focused on. What I focused on is making sure it cash flows because I'm paranoid about recessions, right? So yes, even though most of the money I've actually made hypothetically on paper, if I sold everything today, I would have some money, and the only reason I made that is through appreciation. But it's never what I focused on. That's just honestly, 5 years ago I wouldn't have been a part of this panel because I just was buying here because it was convenient, right? Because I was finding cash flow here, and so it worked, right? And so to answer the question, because I've always focused on cash flow, and same as Jen, DSCR is really important to me, and it's important to lenders and capital partners that are sophisticated. We want to be showing a high debt service coverage ratio. We want a low debt to income ratio, right? Like all of that stuff should be looking good across the portfolio. And personally, if a recession happened, I could drop rents, anywhere between 20 and 30% on any of my stuff and still cover my mortgage at least. Yeah, I might be slightly, I might be paying in here and there to cover manage maintenance expenses, but for the most part, I could drop rents everywhere and still be okay. And of course, I would be prevented from selling unless I wanted to take a loss on stuff. But if there was a big recession, I think all of my portfolio would be okay in that case because I focused on finding cash flow from day one or from 6 months in after rehab. So, Augie, how would your portfolio do if there was a recession?
My portfolio would do good. So here's the thing. You make money when you buy. If you all are looking for some margin after you complete a project, you all aren't going to make any money, okay? I got to make sure that I'm going to make whatever I'm going to make off that property, and it's going to meet my metric day one. When I was buying a $1.1 million piece of land in March of 2020, you better bet I believe I put my big boy pants on when COVID was coming up, because I had to either lose $150,000 cash or say everything will be fine. I knew in this particular case, everything would be fine because I bought 3 single-family lots for $1.1 million that were valued at about 1.8. So the market would have to go down about 40% before I break even. And at that point, I'd still probably want to build homes there because I'd be buying them at market value. So make sure that there's margin when you buy. And typically how you do that is you buy something that somebody has misallocated the value and they don't understand the value of that asset. And those are all over the place. I think almost every single family home in the entire Seattle market where you could build a dadu in the backyard is undervalued. And you might be sitting here like, but you're talking about $900,000 home in Seattle. Yes, I believe it's undervalued at this point if you could put a dadu in the backyard.
Cool. All right, guys, we're coming up on an hour and a half here. This has been quite the discussion. I love it. Let's see if any more questions have come up. Otherwise, we may call it a day. All right, last question. For property managers, where do you put out your ads? What are some interview questions or litmus tests for your property managers? Yeah, Augie said Zillow. We've found property managers through Craigslist, Monster.com. I mean, okay, we're looking for internal property managers for trailer parks. A little different than finding a property manager for your single family home rental. But I recommend asking around on Wari, getting that sheet of questions that Jennifer asked so you can interview them, and going from there. So anyone else want to add to that? Cool. So this has been an awesome debate. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Jennifer, Cody, pleasure to debate with you guys. I feel like I learned something. I feel like I'm going to go invest out of state now. So I think you guys did a great job. I'm going to keep investing in state because it's clearly the better option, but I'm going to diversify.
Once I get all my money, I'm definitely going out of state. So you guys got it right on the cash flow piece.
Nice.
Right on.
Mark's wondering who won. Mark, is it really a question of who won? Literally, you know, Mark. Again, yeah, Jan, really appreciate the invite. Super fun, great company, guys, great discussion. And for any investors that are really kind of going through the motions of thinking about where the best place is to invest your money, yeah, I mean, consider kind of what you learned today. If you can find deals in your home market, certainly if that fits your criteria, then do it. If you're having a hard time finding deals, or you want to be a little bit more passive, buy nicer properties out of state, get more bang for your buck, then give us a call. We're happy to help, or reach out to Cody and I. We're very transparent, happy to share. Of course, anyone that wants to learn about mobile home parks and all the other crazy stuff, flamethrowers, reach out to Wari host Jan. Got some loans from Augie. I think we covered a lot tonight, guys.
Wait, Cody does great loans too. So reach out to both of us for all your mortgage needs.
Cody has gone and gotten licensed in a lot of these states that we're buying in so that we can continue to work with one person or one team and take that pre-approval letter to multiple states. So again, great discussion, guys. Let us know for those who watch. Yeah, let us know what your next action item is going to be. Maybe it's analyzing deals out of state. Maybe it's kind of thinking about your top 2 to 3 markets. Maybe it's confirming your decision to stay in state. We'd love to hear from you guys. So let us know in the Facebook chat.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Everyone.
Always fun.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Have a good one, guys. See you later.
All right. See y'all.